You want to try to remove as much friction as you can if you want to get people to convert. Making people jump through hoops is probably not going to get them to convert because people have more options today than they ever did on where they can buy just about any product, unless you're the only one who sells your own product. And even then, it's got to be so amazing people want to jump through hoops to buy it.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of What's Working in E-commerce. I'm your host, Egan Heath. I'm the owner of Caravan Digital. We're a direct-to-consumer e-commerce agency. We help with paid search, paid social, and email automation. And today I have on another D2C marketer who's very seasoned in this. Duane Brown is CEO and head of strategy at Take Some Risk, Inc. Duane, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Tell us a little bit about, how you got into this industry and kind of your background.
Yeah, I went to school literally for public relations and PR, and I realized I didn't want to write press releases the rest of my life. So a couple years in, someone I had met in my first job still had a job at a large company, and their sister company was hiring, so they got me an interview, and then 4 rounds of interviews and a psych test later on a phone call. They offered me a job in advertising, and we did a lot of lead gen back then for big Canadian brands, but even brands like Research in Motion or BlackBerry, depending on how old you are, which company you recognize name-wise. And so I got started there running ads for big banks and telecom and hospitals in Canada, to Research in Motion, to lots of oil and gas. And it taught me a lot about both lead generation, but Google Analytics and how that works. Because it really just was me and my boss and what was, effectively the digital department. And that lasted a couple of years until we got bought by a bigger company, and then they shut down our little division, and I lost my job along with everybody else eventually. So I went to freelance for a couple of years, then I went to live in Australia for 6 months. Then I went to live in the UK in London for 2 years. And then when I came back, I basically lived in Vancouver, Canada for about 4 years, 2 years working for a tech company. I quit because I was bored. I went to just freelance and kind of do my own thing. I didn't really have an intention to start an agency of any kind. And then 2008 came, and then 2020 came, and I had to make a path. And so I decided, let's build a small team and work with clients so that I could also take vacation time. And then fast forward 6 years later, 6.5 years later now, and we are where we are, and we've been through what is probably the worst pandemic ever, all things being equal.
Yeah. That's the long and short of it. I love, your storied career here of all kinds of experience, and then also globetrotting. So love to see it. I'm kind of plugged in with the Dynamite Circle, digital nomad folks too. So always love to see a fellow digital nomader. I'm looking at some of your LinkedIn experience. You're at some of these very top brands, of very interesting companies in terms of Top Marketer, Unbounce, and others. I'm curious kind of what you took away from some of those experiences. What did you learn?
Yeah, I often try to take jobs where I think I'll learn something different or pick something up, because if your skill set looks like everybody else, it's kind of hard to differentiate yourself. It's like when people say they're going to go to undergrad and then grad school, and their undergrad and grad school is like everyone else's. I'm like, well, how do you stand out in the market if everyone's got the same piece of paper as you? I think on Bounce, I learned a lot around what does it actually take to run marketing? You don't need a large team. It's about putting the right people in the right seats, and taking some people out of their seats and off the bus because maybe they're just not the right person to get you where you are. Because the people who got you from A to B aren't always the people who are going to get you from B to C or C to D. And then even before that, with brands like ASOS and Jack Wills I worked on in the UK, a lot of that is thinking more about things from a European perspective, and how to run campaigns across multiple countries and multiple languages. Spending $500,000, £500,000 a month, and really thinking about how do we just get more revenue from each customer and get each customer to spend more money so you can grow the business more profitably. And then even before that, when I worked in lead gen and stuff like that, a lot of that's how does Google Analytics work and track, and I was very new in my career, only a couple years out of college, university, so it was all the basics of how does Google really work, and how does analytics really work, how do you track things, what is this crazy thing called UTMs that everyone keeps on talking about that I kind of have to learn. So I try to take a little bit of things each way, and then freelance between all that stuff is just how to run a business, and you still got to spend time marketing yourself while working on the work. And then you got to learn when to say no to some stuff. And then even just things about financial data make sense, as in, i.e., you've got to understand your financial data of what's your run rate for your business and when are you going to run out of cash, and making sure people pay you is really important. And cash flow is pretty much everything. Everything else doesn't really matter if you don't have cash in the bank or cash coming into the bank account.
Yeah, that's well put. I'm curious, on those accounts where you're running hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in ad spend, is that a one person job? Is that a team? How do you approach that?
Oh yeah, I mean, for most accounts, that's definitely like a team. I mean, you could make it a one-person job if that's all they worked on, but even then, it's really at least two people of us, senior level where they've been working a long time, so they have depth of experience. But then they also have lots of knowledge in lots of places, so they can apply those different pieces of knowledge to the account. So it's definitely a team effort because obviously, if that person goes away on vacation, you've got someone else to cover. So if you spend $500,000, dollars or pounds a month, it's two people, it's three people, at the very least. A lot of what matters is, how many countries you're in, how many languages or stuff in, because the more languages, more countries, it makes it more complicated. If you're just spending $500,000 in America, it's very different than spending $500,000 across America and Europe because you've got more countries and languages, and it makes it a lot more complex because you're trying to, write ads for America, and then write ads for the UK, and then write ads in like French and German and Spanish and Portuguese. And so that really determines, what actually matters in terms of like how many people you need in terms of the size of the account and how many countries it has and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Pretty interesting. I'm curious. I assume, you were running ads, obviously being a different language or even, US English to British English, those are different things. And so those would be different ads, different campaigns and so on that people would see. What else was different? Was it the landing pages? Was it anything about the way the offers were positioned that had to be different when you would sell outside the US?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes, Americans could be more price sensitive than maybe our brothers and sisters up in where I am in Canada. I mean, the British can be price sensitive depending on what the product is as well. So understanding if, a certain country might be more price sensitive. People in Italy sometimes want to talk to people before they make a purchase. So understand that's part of this customer journey. So really trying to understand the customer journey of each country. The landing pages wouldn't always be different, other than obviously you'd write in British English or Canadian English or French or whatever it is. Because when you work on things like Jack Wills and ASOS, things are the same across all the different sites. They're just in a different language, and maybe the model might potentially be different, so it's a little bit more localized. But they do try to keep things as consistent as they can across sites, so it's easy to manage. And then things might be different if they had, like, let's say, a country manager for Germany or a country manager for France. Well, then you'd work with that person to make sure things are kind of like Frenchified or Germified, if you will, in terms of like localization. Well, you still try to run your ads from like, basically the UK for across, the UK and Europe and America.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm also curious, it's such a power combination to do, PPC, pay per click, and then also CRO, conversion rate optimization. How would you approach that? Are you testing multiple ads at once and then those are going to the same landing page and the landing page has split test variants? How do you know where to test and kind of where do you focus those efforts?
A lot of it's figuring out like where do people drop off in the funnel, right? You've got like my ads get shown on Google, so have you won the auction? Okay, are people clicking on my ad? Well, yes or no. Okay, that's the problem I've got to fix. Okay, people are clicking my ad and coming to the website, but people aren't converting, so are people dropping off at some point on the landing page or on the checkout? So it's kind of really looking at the funnel of where people are dropping off and then figuring out how you can sort of plug the holes, so to speak, to fix it. You try not to run too many tests at the same time. So if we're testing ads, let's test ads. Let's not try to test ads at just landing pages. Because unless you are, an Amazon or an ASOS or a huge brand where you spend enough money that you can afford to test two ads and two landing pages, most brands are better off testing one or the other, drawing a conclusion from that, and then running another test again. Most brands try to do too much at once and they try to test too many things and they're unhappy when either results don't go the way they want or they don't have enough data to actually make an informed opinion.
Yeah, that's well put. I'm curious how you're thinking about everything right now. We're speaking here in May 2023. It's about to be a big force to GA4. What do you guys see working and kind of where are you focusing in your accounts to drive results?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it, since 2018 of the agency. Like, we're always focused on profitability. Like, most of our clients haven't raised, VC funding or some kind of capital outside of the company. And so for us, it's always been important to be profitable on the first purchase, maybe profitable at most on the second purchase. The odd client might want to break even on the first purchase. And so always looking to do, how do we just make things more profitable? So obviously there's what we can do in the ad account, whether it's Google ads, Amazon ads, paid social stuff like Facebook or TikTok. But when that's covered, it's how do we improve things on the website? Most of our clients, I think, would agree that they're probably more creative people than CRO people or potentially business people. I definitely wasn't a business person before I started to run my own company. It's something you have to learn. So we try to help them figure out, okay, well, here's where our issue is on the website. People from paid and SEO are dropping off at this point. How do we fix that? Can we tweak the landing page? Can we make things more clear? Is the text too small? Is there not enough images? Do you not have any social proof on this page or customer reviews? Figuring out ways that maybe the client's website isn't sort of at table stakes of what everyone else is doing. Customer reviews is a great example. Lots of times people almost sleep on that when they should have more customer reviews on their website because people trust other people when it comes to purchasing. And then if clients are on like BigCommerce or Magento or Shopify Plus, then obviously you can work on the checkout and figure out is there ways to add social proof and customize the checkout so it's a better experience. You want to try to remove as much friction as you can if you want to get people to convert. Making people jump through hoops is probably not going to get them to convert because people have more options today than they ever did on where they can buy just about any product, unless you're the only one who sells their own product. And even then, it's got to be so amazing that people want to jump through hoops to buy it, which, unless you're selling like, I don't know, crack or something like that, and people want to buy that, like, no one's going to just buy it because you made them jump through a dozen hoops, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. For years, we've worked with WooCommerce, and sometimes I think the default on that is if you've never bought before, you have to create a login. So you actually have to work with a developer or whatever to turn that feature off, and that's a terrible one. So I know that the closer you get to checkout, the more important those steps are. I'm curious on the GA4 piece. Is there a way you guys are approaching that? How do you talk through clients? If they're used to universal analytics, now we have to live in this new world. The tools are a little different. Data models a little different. How are you guys navigating that?
Yeah, it is very different. A client asked about that actually the other day, like yesterday. And they asked him like, well, should we pull data from GA4 today or do we wait till July 1st? Because our last person said to wait till July 1st. I'm like, in theory, I think you should try to pull data from both platforms because, how data is attributed into Universal Analytics or GA3 is different than GA4. And that way we can kind of compare and see how they're different and see what story they each tell. All things being equal, if we had them as a client, we've set up clients since 2021. So, Q3, early Q4, October of 2021, we set up clients with GA4 profiles. I thought Google would have done this a lot sooner and what made 2020 the time they decided GA4 wasn't a need. So I'm like, let's get it set up. I don't love it, but at least we have data coming in. We have Q4 data coming in, which is really, really valuable. And then luckily they didn't tell us until this year that we had to do it. And so we've had, basically 2 years of data collecting in GA4 for clients. I think most clients have not really looked at GA4. They're in I don't need to worry about that for a few months. I'm just going to ignore it. Us as an agency, our goal has been, spend 10, 15 minutes a day in GA4 and like poke around and look at things. And each day you'll find new stuff and eventually you'll become familiar with it and it'll be okay. Versus trying to just hide away and hope that it doesn't happen when in reality it is going to happen. And hiding your head in the sand isn't going to really work. So we haven't had to train clients per se because most clients don't want to, acknowledge it for lack of a better word. But we've been looking at it every day and just trying to like make sure we understand what's going on and where things are, what we can and can't do. But I think everyone's trying to learn GA4 right now because we're all basically starting from scratch.
Yeah, and I know you and I met on a panel in Foxwell Founders Group talking about GA4 and what's coming up and what's possible with it. I think the more I play with it, the more I see we can probably find what we need in there. It's maybe even just a handful of 3 or 4 reports that we're really going to lean on heavily of where did people come from, how do they get to the page, what events are firing, where are they dropping off, and you can even add custom columns and things like that. A lot of people have asked about how do we see conversion rates and stuff like that. We actually created a video about how to do that. So it is in there. It's just kind of this learning curve of this is a totally different tool. So I appreciate that. Inside your Google ad accounts, I'm curious, what do you guys see working? Are you leaning into Performance Max? Are you still breaking out, kind of standard shopping and standard search? How are you guys approaching your campaigns?
The search end of things, yeah, we do have clients who still use search ads and they work. Search ads, I think, can be hit or miss these days for a lot of brands, whether you're retail, e-com, D2C, what have you. Our philosophy is if search ads are working, let's keep it. If it's not working, we pause it or turn it off or turn down the budget, potentially. And then from a shopping perspective, Performance Max is really just a tool. Smart shopping was a tool, standard shopping was a tool and is a tool because standard shopping still exists. And so for most of our clients, we're running a combination of Performance Max and standard shopping. There are things Performance Max are great at. There are some things they're not great at. They're not always great at spending the right money on the right SKUs. And so sometimes you got to break up things into other campaigns. And sometimes the other campaign could be Performance Max. Other times we want more control of our bids. And so standard shopping makes more sense. And so we find most clients have a bit of both running. We don't have any clients that have just Performance Max. We don't have any clients that just have standard shopping. I think we're probably another year, probably 2 years away from that being the case because Google, just like GA4, they're kind of building it as they go. And if we're all going to be guinea pigs for them to build as we go, then we have to wait till the product's probably at a better maturity rate. It's not going to be the same maturity rate as when they launched dynamic search ads, 10, 12 years ago. It took them a long time, like 5 or 6 years to get the product really good. We're probably at another year before the product is at where DSA was 6 years in. And so we just need the product, I think, to be better. I think to understand the nuances of different things, e-commerce is different than lead gen, is different than subscription. You can't have one campaign, in this case, Performance Max, just shoved down the throat of everyone and work for everyone. Because that doesn't actually make sense. So Google doesn't understand the difference between milk chocolate and chocolate milk. So if it doesn't get the basics of that, I don't know how it's going to get every business out there and just have one campaign that works.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, when you have a client that, say they have a lot of SKUs or even just a lot of product categories, will you run all of those in shopping out of the gates to see how they do? Or do you kind of pick your spots and start with certain products, get those profitable, then move on to others?
Yeah, I guess it depends on what stage they come to us at. Some rarely don't come with anything. So if they don't have anything, we'd probably look at their Google Analytics and see what the best selling products or SKUs are and start with that. If a client's already running stuff, we try to figure out, okay, like what is working, what is not working. Let's focus on trying to make what's working a lot better and building that success. And then try to shift budget away from things that are not working. And then we'll go work on like the second best set of SKUs. And then keep on going from the third best to the fourth best until sort of we work on all the SKUs. There's some SKUs you'll just never win auctions because you're not price competitive, you're not willing to bid enough. So I wouldn't say we work on all SKUs in the sense that we're trying to push them all. The only thing we do is we'd have like a catch-all campaign that has all the SKUs that has really low bids. And so maybe that campaign will pick up some of the SKUs we wouldn't work on. And then we have the other campaigns we have running that focus on particular SKUs, whether it's from a profitability standpoint, a ROAS standpoint, a CPA standpoint, best sellers, seasonality, and then try to push those as much as we can. Because we know they're going to consistently sell, and whether that's in Performance Max or standard shopping, it doesn't really matter.
And in terms of your bids, do you like to start low or start high with those? You can start low and say, hey, let's make sure we don't overpay on a cost per click, but then maybe we might be giving up impression share. We're not showing up as often as we could be. Or do you like to kind of open the gates initially? Let's see what data we have and then dial that back, see if we can get cheaper cost per click. How do you start high or start low there with bids?
Yeah, I mean, if we're starting from scratch, we'll put bids at, 50 cents, maybe $1. It's really rare to see CPCs for shopping where you're paying under 50 cents these days. Like there's just a base floor Google has of what they want to make money wise. Especially if a client's already got campaigns running, we'll go see what they paid over the last year, depending on what the last year looks like, to kind of take away seasonality to see, okay, here's what the average is. Let's start with the average and then kind of work our way what we need to do to be profitable. Sometimes you just can't spend more because you won't be profitable. And so you've got to spend 75 cents a click versus maybe you could spend $1, but at $1, you're unprofitable. So you don't really think about like highs and lows. I know there are people that have that strategy, but I think it's kind of really silly at the end of the day. You just look at the data you have, make a call when it comes to bids. And then if you're getting enough impressions and sales and conversions, see if you can increase it to like capture more market share.
Yeah. Anything else in terms of, the how you guys are running accounts day to day, whether it's on the CRO side or the PPC side, anything that's really been a big win that you think brands should be trying?
Yeah, I think most brands don't probably spend enough time looking at their website. Like they do look at their website, but they look at it from the side, from the perspective that like I built the website versus looking at the website from the perspective of like I'm a new customer, and so what do I need to change or tweak to make it understand? People often, I think, ignore their homepage these days because we send so many people to collection pages and product pages. I think the homepage gets overlooked. Where if you're a net new customer, you're probably going to land on the homepage, all things being equal, because you're going to search for the brand, and so you want to make sure your homepage, clearly states what you do or what you sell, and then kind of flows down to like why I should buy from you or why you different. I think homepages could use more work. And then the other thing I think we don't always realize, partly because of the pandemic, is like today most brands 40 on the low end, but I think most of our clients are in the 50 to 70% of their traffic comes on a mobile device. And so actually making sure your website's mobile optimized, like you don't have too many pop-ups, let alone any pop-ups on the mobile devices, because sometimes it's hard for people to exit out of pop-ups. If you do have pop-ups, it's only one. Making sure that the content you want to see is above the fold, especially if you're on an iPhone, because an iPhone screen is a lot smaller than, like, I'm an Android guy, as an example. So really optimizing your site for mobile, because not only do 40 to 60% of your traffic come by mobile, but more people convert a mobile device today than they did even 5 years ago. And so if you don't want to lose on traffic, you got to make sure your website doesn't just look good on a desktop or a laptop. It also looks good on a mobile device, and that's easy to check out, even if you're on Shopify, because just because you're on Shopify doesn't mean it's going to look good, depending on what theme and customizations you picked.
That's well put. Thank you. I want to ask you about the DTC Direct to Consumer Brand Index. What is this? And can you show it to us or kind of talk us through it?
Yeah, I could definitely show it. I'm going to screen share here and then hopefully pick the right screen on these things. Basically, what we built last year is we really looked at trying to build something where we could look at what brands were doing in different categories. Like, there are tons of brands out there. And so we basically have four categories. We have at the top, we have like clothing and accessories. We have like food and beverage. We have home, which is kind of a catch-all of anything that doesn't fit on the other three categories. And we have personal care, which is like beauty and skincare and hair stuff like that. And then each of these categories are subcategories. So personal care's got skincare, beauty. If you scroll past skincare and beauty, because it's a huge category of literally hundreds, you've got like hair and shaving, you've got deodorant, soap, stuff like that. Obviously, food and beverage, you've got tons of different food and beverage categories. So like water and soda, tea and coffee. There's alcohol, cereal,
Duane,
nut.
if I can back you up just a minute too, of why did you put this together and how do you use it? And maybe explain it for people who are just hearing this and can't see the huge data sheet spreadsheet you have on this screen.
Oh yeah, great call, great call. Sorry, everyone. So basically, the way we use it and why we built it. So we built it as a way to keep track of like what other brands are out there. So we have everything from their website. We link to their Facebook ad library. We link to their YouTube channel, their Instagram handle, and if they're on TikTok, we link to that as well. So if we take on a client in like alcohol or some category, we can go to the list and see like what other brands compete in that space, and then look at like what are they doing on Facebook for ads, what are they doing on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube. So it's a quick way to kind of get a pulse of what brands are doing who compete with you, whether you're a brand in-house or you're an agency, kind of trying to understand what someone's doing for someone who you're trying to pitch to win as their business. And we try to update it at least once a month with new brands we come across and find. So we really built it as a way to like have some place we can easily go to find out where brands are in a category. Because always trying to like search brands who do X, Y, and Z isn't always the best way to find brands if you're trying to like pitch a client or win business, or you just took a new job somewhere in house. So there's about 1,300 brands there. Our team uses it. Lots of people in the industry use it. It's probably one of the largest free databases out there. There's no signing up. There's no email. Just come to the URL. And if you want, in the bottom left the bottom right, there's a little view larger. So we built this on Airtable, because Airtable was the only thing that could support 1,300 rows of data. We tried to use Notion, and I love Notion, but Notion used to buckle. But if in the bottom right, you can click on View Larger Version, it'll take you to like the Airtable version, which you want to see it on an even bigger screen. We found it really valuable just to keep track of like what's going on, what's happening in the space, because there are tons of brands, especially if you're outside of North America. So we have brands from Africa, we have brands from Europe, we have brands from Australia and APAC. So if you're in some other part of the world, we've got brands there as well. And so it's not even you're in America, I'm in Canada. It is not a North Americanized viewpoint. We try to be very global in our perspective of brands. There are lots of cool D2C brands out there in other parts of the world and doing cool stuff.
Yeah. And this may be so obvious to you that it's hard to even talk through, but it's like when you guys pull this up, how do you use it then? So you're looking at similar brands in a similar industry. Are you drawing inspiration from what they're doing? Are you trying to differentiate? What's that thought process and how do you use this?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, right? You're trying to like get inspired by brands who maybe do things a little bit differently than how you conventionally do things. But then, yeah, we want to make sure that we're not, copying what other brands are doing, because if you just copy what someone else is doing, you're not going to sort of stand out in the crowd. People get hundreds, if not thousands, of ads a day when you leave your house, including leaving your house versus what you see online. And so copying what another brand is doing isn't going to get you very far. So using it to kind of get inspired, but also make sure that we're like, okay, we're not going to do this type of ad or this style of ad because like 4 brands are doing it, and it would just be another ad in a sea of ads. That's why we've got both the Facebook ad library here, but also see what brands are doing organically. So Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I think what brands do organically can be great inspiration to how you could take that idea and turn it into an ad. Because often, there's a separate people who do ads and there's separate people who do organic stuff, and they don't always talk at brands. And so you can get lots of ad ideas by looking at.
Anything else you want to share, Duane, in terms of, what you guys have seen working and kind of how you're approaching your accounts?
Yeah, I mean, the best thing we've seen working across clients is really trying to understand like why customers buy. People buy for either like a use case or they buy for a pain point. I buy because I'm going to take this product camping, or I'm buying because like your product helps me with like menopause, and so I don't get hot flashes if I'm a woman, right? If you understand like why people use it from use case or a pain point, you can bid on those keywords. You could have that influence your ad copy or your creative if it's like video and images for Facebook. And then you can go out and target more people who have a use case, whether it's camping or that pain point, hot flashes, if you're an older woman with menopause or just any woman that gets menopause. And so that we find really helpful. It's not the easiest thing to do because it means you've got to, in my case, last month I sat down and read 600 reviews, which was like barely scratching the surface of customer reviews, but I picked 3 or 4 popular products. I read all the reviews and then started to pick out like what people said about that product of why they bought it, and then started to like rank those and like, well, we haven't talked about this before. We haven't talked about that before. This could be super interesting for ad copy in an ad. And then we could go out and figure out how do we turn this into an ad for Facebook in this case, and then target people who've got that pain point so we can attract more people who make our best customers. That works really well, but it's a lot more work than I'm just going to throw some random ad up on like Google or Facebook and hope it works.
Yeah, I love that tip. Dig through the reviews, see what people are talking about, see what they like, see what they don't like. I've even heard of look at competitor reviews, see what they don't like about the others, so we really know kind of even where the pain points are with the solution. So that's great. Duane, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this. I hope people will check it out. So if you go to takesomerisk.com, you can check out the DTC Brand Index. Duane, where can people find you, and who's a good person to reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, if you go to our website, you can go to contest page and just pop us an email if you want to chat about hiring us or just chat about opportunities in general. And then I probably spend more time than I should on either like Twitter, LinkedIn, or Reddit. So both on LinkedIn and on Twitter, it's just Duane Brown. So you can just go look me up. It's not that hard. And then I spend a lot of time on the PPC subthread on Reddit. But most people will probably reach out probably on LinkedIn and Twitter because it's probably the easier one to reach out to someone.
Yeah, sounds great. Well, Duane Brown, thanks so much for coming on and sharing what's working in e-commerce.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.